Hello, guys. This is the Trick Way. It's a new channel we're starting because we've got to get that. It's like a tree, isn't it? My name is Trevor. Trev. I'm known as many things. You can call me what you want. I've been called worse. And I'll let my colleague introduce himself, colleague and friend.
Grey Gamer 25 here. That's what I've been known by for a long time. The real first name is Art, like King Arthur, but that's another story.
Oh my God. Oh, this is we're hearing all these strange new things about Mr. Grey.
But we are one with Trek.
We are. He's known as Grey to me. I'm sure he's been called worse as well. We decided to start this channel because we had safe to say, Grey, we had our finger in a couple of different pies. So we met each other via gaming, Extreme PC UK. We have some mutual friends over there, and that's gaming, mainly gaming focused, but there is an entertainment channel within that we speak about all things entertainment, but Gray and I kind of hijack it a little bit and talk about Star Trek a decent amount. And we also have, Gray kicked off a podcast called Gray's Green Room. And that is great fun. That is purely just audio podcast. Myself and a couple of the rest of us, including Gray, speaking about all things entertainment. We hijacked sometimes a bit too much of that to talk about Star Trek. So we decided to ease back in it slightly, still talk about it, and give the other guys a bit of peace and quiet so we could then start YouTube and do a channel because we're passionate about it. And safe to say, Gray, we could probably rabbit on for hours about Star Trek if we're left to our own devices, huh?
Probably, yep.
Probably, exactly. So we thought we'd just come on, first video, and let everyone know what we're about, who we are, a little bit of information on us, why we like Star Trek, why we don't like Star Trek, what we don't like about Star Trek, and just, don't go on for too long, and then kind of lay the land of what this channel should really be about. Now, we will be doing regular videos when Star Trek Lower Decks Season 3 starts. And that's in about the 25th, I believe, of August. Ray's been catching up on that because it's not one of his more favourite Trek series. But he's a trooper. He's taking one for the team, and he's getting up to speed so that if I ask him any questions on it, he'll be able to answer. And I will be doing the same with the original series because I haven't seen it for a long time. I think I got the raw deal, not in terms of the quality because it's good. It's just there's 96 odd episodes, so might be there for a while.
There's a lot, that's for sure.
There is a lot, yeah. So essentially, we don't want to focus too much on spending 10, 20 minutes, whatever, just reviewing an episode. There's loads of channels that do that kind of thing, and we want to be a little bit different. We go off in tangents, Gray and I, when we're talking about Star Trek and entertainment and various other things, and it kind of works. We would like to stick to that, to be honest with you. We're fans of that. And then we would probably review each episode of Star Trek really, really quickly so that there's some context to what the hell we're talking about. And then we would just spend a good chunk of the episode actually talking about our opinions on it, our thoughts, our feelings, what we like, what we don't like. And that's why it could maybe go on for a bit longer because we're very passionate. So especially Gray, if he doesn't like something, he will tell you. And that's what we want to hear on the Trek Way.
It's a deep dive.
It's a deep dive. Yeah. I like it. Hey, you'll get nothing but the truth and honesty from us guys on here. So, with that, I would like to hand it over to Gray for a moment. Just a little bit about yourself, Gray, you don't need to be too personal. Be as personal as much or as little as you want. What got you into Star Trek? How long you've been a Trekkie for, what you like and dislike, and take as little as long as you want.
Okay. Obviously you can tell I'm a little bit older than Trevor is, and that's another reason why I'm called Gray Gamer 25. But it's all in how you think. My head says I'm like 30 years old. The rest of me says, no, you are not. But that's the way it goes. But how I got into it is I was always interested in science fiction. Read it when I was a a kid even in elementary school. I was always fascinated with the space program, always was, and unfortunately, I'm at the age where I lived through the space program, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, landing on the moon, all that stuff. And I always was into science fiction. My favorite science fiction writer at that time was Jules Verne, and I read like all his books and stuff. And then when I saw something being talked about, it was called Star Trek. I'm going like, well, what's this? And then I start hearing about this. I'm going like, wow, okay. So I start tuning in and going like a real sci-fi show. Because to be honest, there really wasn't much on back then. And we're talking about 67, 68, 69. And so I'm going like, well, I'm starving for anything besides Saturday morning cartoons that were sci-fi, right? So I start watching Star Trek, and it's just like, and I can remember when I was only like, what was I? I was like 10 years old, and I'm sitting there with my jaw literally on the floor, just going like, no, this can't be, no, this is too good. There's something, no, and I was just like eating it all up, and I just couldn't. I just was going bonkers and stuff. And the show was on at a reasonable time where my parents weren't yelling at me to go to bed, or something. And I do remember that the third year that the original series was on, they unfortunately purposely moved it to Friday night at around, or was it Friday night? I think it was Friday night, late, like 10 o'clock or whatever, in an effort to basically kill it. That's a long story. And wow, trying to argue with my parents to stay up that late was very difficult, but they saw I was really passionate, so that was one of the few things they let me get away with.
Okay.
On that particular nights, and so I used to watch it. So there was nothing like watching it when it happened, when it was first for real.
Yeah.
Because back then the effects and stuff were like groundbreaking. Like, what is this? I mean, I've
What
never seen
the
space
ship
like
the
that
ship
before.
going like this, and when the guy was moving it along the screen,
Yeah,
it looked like
But
janky as hell.
to a kid, yeah. Well, now we can say that, but when we look at it and stuff like that, then it was just like
That's all you saw. That's all you knew.
real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So I really grew up on that. No, a funny story too about that. After the series had gone off, and I was a little bit older, I of course watched the reruns probably 2 or 3 times. I must have seen the entire season at least 4 times through.
Yeah.
But one time I remember I was older, and I thought I had seen every episode of Star Trek more than once. And I was watching a rerun, and there was one show that I completely freaked out on and geeked out on. And it was a show that I somehow missed every single time.
Wow.
And this episode popped up, and it was like brand new. And when you're talking about a show that had already been off the air a few years, and somehow I missed this one episode,
Wow.
and I watched this, and I just geeked totally. I'm like, wait a minute, how did I miss this one? How is that possible? And I was just like, I was just nuts. I have to get the exact name of the episode, but it was one of those little creatures used to fly around, and it flew around and stuck on Spock's back and basically attached to him.
Okay.
And it was a whole thing about that. Yeah, it was pretty creepy, and I was like, oh, that's
wow.
weird. But anyway, that was just a side story. So I digress a little bit, but it's all Trek.
That's part of the flavor.
Story.
It's part of why we like it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is pretty fascinating. Some things even I didn't know there, Grace. So cheers for sharing.
Sure.
Myself, I think actually, because I struggle to remember what I had for breakfast. Never mind why I like Star Trek. I've been a Star Trek fan most of my life. I'll be honest with you. So I was growing up. I'm 39, right? I don't care about age, and I won't divulge Grace's age because that's for him to divulge. But for me, I grew up. I was born in '83, so while I was around, while the Next Generation was showing, I probably wasn't. I didn't appreciate these things until I was a good bit older. So my shows that I really grew up with, that I was interested more in from like my young teens onwards, I would say, would probably be Deep Space Nine and Voyager, because they were shown roughly about the same time. And we will get into things about your favourite shows and that kind of thing in another episode, to be fair. But I'm a Voyager guy, so that was my shtick. I love that stuff. I remember before the internet was a thing. Yeah, even I was around before the internet was not a thing. That you didn't have the streaming where everyone could watch things at the same time. Great, as you know. You would have tapes. You would have VHS, Betamax, wherever it happened to be. And you would. I had season 5 of Voyager on VHS. And I lost them all. God knows where they are now. And I remember.
I was gonna say, you still got them?
No, because they'd be worth some pennies. God knows where they are. But no, I would go down to a couple of conventions back in the day. And you had to be careful because you wouldn't know what was happening with Star Trek for a while. It would be shown. So I'm in Scotland and Gray's in Florida. Gray being in the States, they're going to get Star Trek first. I mean, it was created in the States. That kind of makes sense. And then the rest of the world would get it later. For example, Deep Space Nine, it was several months later that appeared in the UK. So when people are watching the finale of Voyager Endgame in the States, I got to see it literally days after, anything between days and 2 weeks after it was shown in the States. For back then was impressive. And I saw it in a convention down in Blackpool in England. And I remember being in awe. I went down, I met all the Voyager cast, Kate Mulgrew, Robert Duncan McNeil, you name it. They were. Jerry Ryan wasn't there, and she's my favourite for maybe obvious reasons, but this is a PG family, so we're stream, so we won't go into detail why, but she's a good actress as well. But anywho, I met all these people, had a ball. I remember dancing with the Borg Queen, maybe after a few too many drinks. I can't remember in the series, Gray. I can't remember if that was Alice Krige or Suzanne Thompson. One done the movie, one done the TV show. But
you probably met the one from the movie. I think
no? TV show. It's the one that done Endgame. She was different from the one in the movie. You see.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, so I remember meeting all these guys. We watched Endgame, and my jaw was on the floor because I'm sorry, I'll be a bit biased. I thought that was a brilliant finale. And then we got a surprise. I remember this is what really got me to Star Trek. I probably was 18 at this convention, and I remember it was Q&A time, so Kate Mulgrew came on to the stage. She's doing her thing. She's answering questions. And then someone with a really squeaky voice asked her a question who I found out afterwards was Robert Duncan McNeil. Was going, excuse me, Captain, I'm talking about all the captains of Star Trek. Could you tell me who your favourite captain is? And she went, well, you've got Kirk for being a ladies' man, and you've got Cisco for being no nonsense and blah, 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 and, but to be honest, it has to be Jean-Luc Picard. As soon as she said that, the Next Generation music came on, and Patrick Stewart walked up onto the stage, and I was just like... I was having to pick my chin up off the floor and kind of glue it back together. I was like, holy, why? This is a Voyager thing. Turns out he was doing a theatre play, because that's where he comes from, as people probably know Patrick Stewart. He comes from theatre. Very good at the theatre, actually. And he was nearby, and he decided to pop in and say hello. He'd pre-signed some things, but he couldn't stay for too long, and he had a little chin wag and stuff, and that was fantastic. And ever since then, I was absolutely glued to it. And I've been watching Star Trek ever since. I guess we could now briefly talk about a couple of things we maybe don't like about Star Trek without delving too deeply, Gray, I guess, because we can save some of this stuff for later on. But what I wanted to ask you first was, you being in Florida, you being a Florida man, I asked you this the other day as well. You've grew up through a lot of these things. Yeah, you saw the moon landing and stuff, and that inspires a lot of people to be Star Trek fans. We were talking about this the other day, actually, when we were doing our gaming pod, that if it wasn't for Star Trek, some astronauts right now, some people in the ISS are there because of Star Trek, literally. Some technologies have came from Star Trek, so it's a big deal in all of our lives. It's the most, the ship right behind Gray, different iterations of it, but just say Enterprise in general, is the most iconic spaceship in all of Star Trek, and I'm going to say even including Star Wars. That's a whole different debate as well. We don't say those words really together in this, because this is the Trek way, not the Wars way. But
That's right.
But that there is epitome of what Star Trek's all about. That's Gray's favourite ship. We won't talk any more about ships because that's for another video as well. Ships, top 5, what we like, what we dislike. But that's a classic there. You can see my L cars on here sitting there, which is pretty cool. Some models. And that's another idea as well, Gray. Eagle Moss who make these ships. They're
I got a couple.
they
I'll
but
have to break them out. I have one original Enterprise, not Eagle Moss,
Hmm.
but and then I have God, I gotta look in the garage. Now you got me going. I think
So
I
you
have
got
2 or 3 other ships in pewter stashed in the garage somewhere. I'll have to take them out.
I'd be curious to see what you do have in the collection. You can only see some of what I got there. You can see the Discovery at the end, which I hated at the start, but it's growing on me. And that's not the refit, that's the original one. Now, we can talk about this another time again, but because we don't want to digress, despite that being our shtick. Eagle Moss went into liquidation recently, or our administrators came in, and they've been going for a long time. So, and I've got a subscription to them at the moment, so I really hope they sort that out because I love the models, so I want to see them keep coming. But growing up in Florida, did you ever go to any of the space launches? Any launches live? Did you see any cool stuff? How close are you to NASA HQ? That kind of thing.
Well, I'm kind of embarrassed to say I've been in a space program, like I said, since probably the end of the Mercury program, and followed it for hours and hours. I mean, extremely into it, following all the broadcasts of work. However, I had never been to the Cape for a launch. Now, being in South Florida, though, one of the things I have seen more than once is that occasionally when they did night launches, they didn't do many, but they did some. If I went outside and looked in the general direction, I saw it go up, even though I'm about, I'm going to guess, about 3 hours south of
Wow.
Kennedy Space Center. And I would look up in the sky at approximately the right angle, and you would see this flame in the sky just kind of light things up for a few seconds, and then it disappeared.
What's the
So
saying,
that was
Gray?
pretty
What's the
cool.
saying? Light this candle. That's what
Yeah,
they're saying,
exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, I wish I would kind of have gone to some other launches. We did go once. I remember my parents. We went up, and there was supposed to be a launch, and they had scrubbed it for a different day, and so that was the closest I ever got to it. So no, but I have been around. There's a space museum. I think it's still there in Alabama. That was pretty cool, and in there they had a lot of the real deal sitting there. They had a lunar module, full size.
Oh wow.
What was really astounding to me that I thought was just really cool is they had an actual, I mean, gutted out, the fuel and all that, of course, was taken out, but an actual Saturn V rocket laying on its side, full size.
Who left that there?
And
Come on,
man,
guys.
walking that length of that rocket, because that's a big rocket.
That'll keep
And
you
by
fit.
the time you come to the bottom of the rocket where the 5 engines are,
Yeah.
literally a 6-foot man can stand in one of the engine cones, one of the 5 engine cones, inside it.
Oh
And it
man.
was just like, it was crazy. I'm looking at this thing just going like, wow, this thing's massive.
Yeah, and you can see when we're talking about rockets and all that kind of stuff at the moment, the SLS that they're getting ready to launch towards the moon, that's going to be one of the biggest rockets ever made. I mean, that's another thing. We might again, it's just it's ideas, it's brainstorming. You talk about something and you have another idea about, well, it's not Star Trek, it's inspired by Star Trek. And Gray and I, especially Gray, I think, are pretty fascinated with space stuff. You see the James Webb Telescope, and it's space porn is the best way of describing it. It looks stunning. And I love watching this stuff. I especially love the SpaceX stuff because that's the future, man. That's how it starts.
Yep.
So I am jealous of that. Gray lives in a part of the world that's almost perfect for the launches and the space stuff, and hence why they're set up there. Me, not so much here, because I live in Scotland, and if you've ever been here, the weather's not very good. And if we tried to set up a spaceport here, they'd be out of business in no time because the weather would be cancelled. Times it's not going to work. I'll leave the space stuff to Gray and Florida. But yeah, just we'll touch on really briefly before we wrap up was we're talking about who we are and our love of Star Trek. But if you could tell me one or two things briefly, Gray, that we'll start with the negative so we can end in a positive, that you don't like about Star Trek, and then maybe tell us briefly one or two things why you do love Star Trek.
Wow, that might take a couple hours. But as far as I don't like Star Trek, I mean, the good and the bads are that we have a lot of new Trek out there, as you've seen. If anybody subscribes to Paramount Plus, etc.,
Yep.
you see all the different Star Trek series. So from a viewpoint of the content of Star Trek, that's cool. But some of the content that they've made have not been exactly what we wanted it to be. And I think, unfortunately, what has happened over this time period of the last, I don't know, I guess 4 years, is that they really don't listen to the fans, or they didn't listen to the fans. And
Yep.
then when it took about 3 or 4 years later, when they finally decided to listen to the fans, because we know a little more than the common fan would know, they start to listen, and then they start making a show like Strange New Worlds, which is great. And then they go like, "Look what we created! Isn't this great?" And we're going like,
And they
"You
take the
idiots!"
credit for it, Gray. They take the credit for it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
They won't. They never in any of the articles ever say anything about the fans even being influential in that whole thing whatsoever.
Yep.
When the story is that on Discovery season 2, when Pike appeared during that season, okay, they weren't planning on making Strange New Worlds. Absolutely not.
Oh, hell no.
But when they saw, when the clamor of the fans and critics alike were like going through the roof, they finally kind of capitulated and said, "Oh, I guess we should make this series. It might be a good idea." And so they finally do it. So unfortunately, like with the things I don't like is Picard season 2, which is trash.
Yeah.
And I'm not fond of Discovery 1 and 2, so much so that I never bothered watching 3 and 4, which I will watch
Has to.
because I've heard it's better. And if they had started that way,
Yeah.
it probably would have been made more sense.
100%.
And that's not the and for people to think that oh well, that's some bad Trek. It doesn't really happen that often. Well, that's not true, because all we got to do is say one word: Enterprise. Nobody talks about that series much
No
anymore
bloody
at
A,
all.
B, C, or D.
So and that series just wasn't very good either. Although I heard the last season was the best of the bunch, but it was too late, too little, too late.
Yes.
But the actors and the way they did the show and the way they wrote it, and the opening music and theme to Enterprise, that TV series was so bad,
Yeah.
and that was enough right there to kill the show.
It
It was
didn't
that
sound
bad.
like Star Trek. I was the same as you, Gray. I didn't think that ever sounded. Star Trek's got that very kind of. There's a lot of instruments in it,
Mhm.
and to be honest with you, for me, I think that's the way it should be.
Sure.
But I understand why you're not a big fan of that. To be fair, so that we're not talking too much about why we dislike it, because we like to be positive people there. Leave us from your side of things on the main reason why you love Star Trek then. But what about it that just attracted you? One thing or idea or person or...
I just think it was the fact that I mean, I could say the same thing that a lot of people say, and it's true that it's a series that gives you hope, and that we're not all idiots, and that eventually in the future things are gonna run better, and we're gonna be able to get along better, deal with things better, blah blah blah, and that's all true.
Yep.
But the other reason is that it was science fiction in the truest sense, where they actually bothered to consult scientists when they did these things, when they did the series and they did the movies, to try to make them as realistic to real science as they could. Obviously, you can't do everything like that; it's impossible.
Yep.
But they did make the effort, and little things like even the cell phone. People credit the people that created cell phones to Star Trek, because people saw them talking on communicators and flip communicators to where the flip phone came out. That wasn't because they wanted to make a phone flip.
Yep.
It's because they saw the flip communicator on Trek and they went, "That'll work,"
Yep.
and they went ahead and did it. And there's other things like that and examples like that. And then for children out there who were children and they grew up on Trek and they're actually astronauts now. There's a fair amount of them that either were astronauts or are astronauts. And
Yeah.
if a show can do that, that's like amazing,
Yeah.
to me.
Um, that sounds. I might steal some of Gray's thunder and agree with quite a lot of that. The one thing I dislike about Star Trek is, and there's not many, is I'll borrow some of Gray's ideas there. Fans are very passionate, so really don't piss in their parade. They're very loyal. Don't ruin canon is the main thing, which they were doing with Discovery at the start. They were breaking canon as well as the quality not being the same, and they realised they were making a mess of canon, so they fixed it by almost rebooting Discovery in season 3. And like Gray said, if it just launched in season 3 right off the bat, futuristic year 3000 Star Trek, it would have been probably great on its own. So they didn't do that, which is a shame. So I don't have too many negatives to say in that respect. I will, I agree mostly with what Gray said there, to be honest with you. But the positive for me is literally, there are many positives, of course, because we're big Trekkies. For me, the most important thing I would have to say is Gene Roddenberry, his vision. Without sounding cheesy, I genuinely believe that the future is going to be a lot better than it is just now, because we still squabble, it's all about money. In the future, I want to see no money around. I want to see everyone purely wanting to do better in their lives to help other people, and not personal wealth and personal greed and things like that. We're miles off of that. That's what I want to see happen for Star Trek, and that's Gene Roddenberry's vision. Slowly but surely it's getting there. It's going to take a hell of a long time. We'll never see it in our generations, but I think it will happen in the future, and that's what keeps me optimistic, I think. And that's why I like Star Trek. But yeah, I'm conscious of the time. We'll probably wrap up there, Gray. We just wanted to say hello to the people, introduce our channel. We will be back regular. We'll do shorter versions where we do reviews and stuff, and then we keep them short. We add our opinion pieces onto them, and then we'll do longer ones, uncut, unhinged, after dark. It's got many different scenes, and we'll gab, we'll blether, we'll chew the fat, and then it might be a talking heads video where someone doesn't need to look at ugly mugs. They can just listen to it almost like a podcast, and then just put your comments and feedback in the chat below for each video. We'll try and answer what we can, because we love talking about Star Trek, so it's just an extension for us. But yeah, thank you for tuning along, coming along and tuning in. If you could be awesome and you like Star Trek and you like our ideas of what we want to talk about, subscribe and give the video a cheeky thumbs up. I think that's what they call it these days, Gray. They do this exactly.
Yep.
But yeah, that's Gray and I signing off. We will talk to you soon. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.
Live long and prosper.